The propaganda's a win, stress feeding on my tension. My countrymen, they love their fiction. Words upon now, it's made with good intentions.
Welcome to 10200. We're here for the 200th and final episode of Season 2. To quote the title of one of our contributors' podcasts, what a wild ride. I'm joined by my co-founder, the second most aged co-founder, Philip. How you doing?
Good morning. I didn't know I was going to be called out for my age so early.
Fuck you.
But all right, that's the energy we're bringing at the end of the season. I love it. That you could hear underneath those generally mellifluous tones from Kyle, the built-up revenge for hundreds of episodes, every time he doesn't show up, where I lie and besmirch him, and he has to build up for just one single little fuck you at the end of the
Kyle was off-screen rebuilding Yugoslavia.
Oh, I'm good. Looking forward to a campaign-themed break, which we'll talk about more later.
Wonderful. And we're also joined by Simone.
Thank you, Kyle. I'm going to do an Elon Musk and put down enough money that you have to call me the founder of 10200.
I swear to God, if you do that, I will.
Absolutely.
You'll do what should be done to Elon Musk? I fell asleep before like 8 p.m. With the lights on. I just got home. I was like, I need a lie flat for a bit, and then out. So I'm waking up in the morning with the same like makeup on, which you can't see because this is an audio medium.
It's an audio medium,
also,
and it's also a shame because the audience can't see that we're all in costume this morning.
Name which member of Commedia dell'arte you are. I'm Piero.
It's been a crazy 3 years. So the last season ended in May 2023, and we went on a break to do a Pledge Me or a Give a Little or one of those fucking things and prepare for the 2023 election. And it's actually horrific how most of the warnings that we were giving at that time about what this government would do have come to pass. And I'd say maybe the only thing we've got even slightly wrong is the level of bumbling incompetence of this government while implementing this shit. Nicola Willis, I think, in particular, like, it had long been a meme on the podcast, and I just think more generally, outside of the mainstream media and political commentariat, that Christopher Luxon was phoning it in, like, since he'd become an MP, essentially. But your Nicola Willis, your Chris Bishop, these people who were kind of held up as the paragons of the National Party, who were going to drag Christopher Luxon across the line and get some liberal policies implemented, hold him back from doing anything too ludicrous, keep ACT in New Zealand First at bay. They've been some of the worst. Willis in particular, right out the gates with the ferry debacle, just almost week after week with just the most like overt incompetence, just showing it off in public. And now we've got an oil crisis we've got a jobs crisis. You know, like, I don't know how we can top what this government has done so far in this decade. That's not like far more clearly driven by global and environmental factors, right? Because most of this has been done under zero pressure.
Yeah, I think it's a good exemplar of how you either can't be a liberal and be in a conservative party like National, or that liberalism itself has those contradictions, right? Especially in the neoliberal period. I think you would have to be a SOCDEM almost to pull it back, right, to kind of 1970s levels. And so therefore you would be left-wing in a strange kind of way, I think that. But liberalism within itself is also like that, you know, because it's like, how does that kind of contemporary aphorism go? Oh, I really hate all of these bad social effects, but the causes are very good. And like, that's what happens if you have an austerity budget, right? And you continue to operate under that.
Oh, we're not actually going to call it that.
Wants.
The RNZ has said we're not would be
Oh, I'm
hard
sorry.
pressed.
Even its strongest critics can't call it austerity because the taxpayers, quote unquote, union has said actually it should be zero. And David Seymour said maybe it should be negative. He's just saying fucking numbers. He's making it up. What are you talking about? I'm sorry. I called it. What did I call it? The rubber room for the rubber room for crayon munching nepo babies or something like that. It's just like. I'm sorry. No, I'm going to stop talking because it's so maddening that our state broadcaster has intentionally tried to push the Overton window so far to the right.
And explained exactly what they're doing when they're doing it. Oh, you'd be hard pressed to say that this thing that exists actually exists because this group that has been well reported on as being an AstroTurf group created to push the Overton window says otherwise. Like, what are we even fucking doing? I think that's been one of the
whatever National does.
I think that's been one of the hardest things to grapple with. Is not necessarily the shift of the media apparatus. I guess all four of our major outlets shifting rightwards. That was something that we've also been talking about for a decade. We've said again and again that broadly left-wing or socially progressive institutions, NGOs, unions, the electoral parties such as they are, other movements needed to be establishing an alternate media ecosystem to reach audiences beyond just their mailing lists because of the way that the media was moving into a stronger defensive capital, I guess broadly. And they failed to do that, but I did not expect the rampancy with which has occurred, the barefaced nature of media's turn, particularly following October 7, 2023, and the beginning of the acceleration of the genocide in Gaza. It's like that was. I can't even describe it. Like it was so maddening to watch. But alongside that very clear genocidal turn among, even if I want to say media decision making about what would run and what wouldn't, the propensity of political commentators in particular to put themselves firmly in a neoliberal orthodoxy camp facing towards fascism. And just, they expected, yes, I know. And everyone will say, oh, but, the corporations and everyone should have known that was going to happen. Yes, and we've talked about that for years, but not like this. It's been so jarring how quickly it's happened and how little critique, analysis, etc., or reflection there has been by some of the people working in media who are often referred to as quite liberal. Actually, media workers are quite left-wing. A lot of reporters are quite socially progressive. There's no evidence of that anymore.
Well, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter, right? It's real, like, scratch a liberal, a fascist bleeds times in the media ecosystem. And yeah, exactly as you're saying, like, especially before the last election, we could see it ramping up pretty badly, and it's only got worse. The kind of unitary fourth estate presentation of information, because there's really not much difference anymore between like the way that the world is interpreted by RNZ reporting versus TV1 versus stuff.
This is that main thing, right? And NZME as well, right?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's all the same, right? Which is very disenfranchising when you're trying to present the world. Not even, not with a particularly radical lens. Just introduce some facts into the equation is quite dispiriting for so-called journalism. Yeah, I mean, what do you do? We've been saying the same thing for 8 years, pretty much, and I haven't noticed much of a response among the kind of media class. Sometimes you get like chinks of light. You get like individual journalists make good efforts and, do specific like investigative reporting or talk about a specific kind of issue. But as far as like across the board, like, yeah, I mean, the reason I'm not as, bearish as Kyle when it comes to our predictions. I'm sure we got lots of stuff wrong.
Philip's wrong about that.
Yeah, another thing that I'm wrong about. But like one thing that we were...
Do you mean bullish?
I do mean, sorry, bearish is the other way around. Bullish about our predictions.
Thanks, Jim Cramer.
Yeah, I know, right? But I think one thing that we were definitely right about was the kind of the embarrassment of like the liberal Nats, as we've already mentioned, like quote unquote liberal Nats, obviously, because they'll always serve capital before they'll serve any whatever kind of like soc dem outcomes. And also like the media classes kind of drift towards irrelevancy, and then they have these, 6 monthly episodes where they go, oh, why don't people trust us? Well, look in the mirror a little bit. Like you have these moments of reflection where they're talking about like the Mikey Sherman story, or like an individual event will happen, and people will go, oh, why do people hate the media? And it's because you can have people like Sean Plunkett correctly saying, like, I was at parties where we were openly joking about like blackmailing each other in like, embarrassing situations with like politicians, and it's a big club and you ain't in it kind of mentality. Of course, there's this kind of populist undercurrent that's there whenever things go wrong. And we have a government that's determined to, funnel capital upwards, which is keeping the ACT New Zealand First national coalition together, despite, the performative aspects of like differentiation that they have to make. Which again, like a lot of commentators said, how could these three possibly work together? Well, it's because they're all serving capital and house owners. Like that's their base. What are you talking about? Like it's not that fucking difficult to see these things.
This is the thing, right?
It's a big
so
spaghetti
easy.
western standoff and you ain't in it. I mean, I honestly, this is where the grand coalition's going to come in, right? And save everything. Which somebody in the 1 of 200 sphere pointed out that the National Party itself was a grand coalition between the former left and right parties in this country when Labour rose up from the working class, right? In order to stave off a socialist takeover of this country. I'll let you talk, Kyle. Sorry, I had something else afterwards.
Keep going.
Oh, I'm going. Buddy, I don't need encouragement. We're 1 of 200 Cassandras, as we've pointed out. I wanted to read from the RNZ article, which talked about, this was the headline top story, by the way, at some point a couple of days ago about the budget being released. It says, those operating allowances are tight, but critics will find it difficult to describe them as austerity, especially with the likes of the Taxpayer Union arguing the numbers should be closer to zero. Singing from the same song sheet traditionally as the ACT Party. When leader David Seymour was asked at Parliament on Wednesday whether he would have liked the cuts to go further, he said his aim would have been, quote, a less than zero budget. And about this, I said, have you considered that as a critic, it will be difficult to describe it as austerity because the rubber room for crayon munching young ACT Nepo burnouts has made up a fantasy story about the economy? Like,
This is essentially it.
Doesn't make any sense.
It genuinely doesn't. They've we've talked about the issues with both sides reporting that can be extrapolated into a media environment where initially for some key issues like climate, it would be 95% of scientists agree that this is bad. Here's a conspiracy theorist who thinks that the government controls weather, and treating those as completely equivalent. With the advent of I guess what you'd say, Trump media handling since 2016, that framing of reality has just gone overboard. And now we're not even getting both sides in the traditional sense. We're getting reality is not what you think it is. It's this other weird thing that has been constructed by often, always neoliberal and capitalist environments. And here's some fascists who think it should be worse, right?
They are maxing, right? Like everything is the simulacrum.
And yeah, I mean it's a bizarrely like anti-popular, anti-mainstream kind of turn, I think, is how you have to think about it by the media. Like it's not even presenting 95% on one side as scientists and 5% on the other side as cranks or whatever it is. Now it's like, on one side, you have like polling, like ask humans what they think. There's never data to back up these claims about like critics will find it hard to blah blah blah. Like do a poll, see if people are describing it as that, but instead of doing that, we have like on the one hand we have, I don't know, whatever unionist is deemed as like tame enough to quote, and then like someone from the Labour Party and maybe someone from the Green Party. And on the other hand, we have like 5 finger puppets over like Jordan Williams's face. And it's like the two things are treated as like equivalent now. And they're literally saying it, like Simone said, like they're saying, by the way, this is an Overton window, and it is hard for me to, to do this. Like,
Traditionally, the same song shoot. Are you fucking kidding me? You're playing our faces.
It's a wild thing to say. In fact, in that piece, I'm not sure that, at least initially, that Labour or the Greens were even asked for comment. It's like,
No, and there was
so we're not
another
even
one.
at that point.
Sorry. There was an article about the move on orders, and they only quoted Paul Goldsmith, not a single opposition person. That was it. And he was lying. Like, they printed lies.
This is why I had to get rid of the BSA, though, right? It's Paul Goldsmith disestablishing it, and then within 3 days, he is quoted in the media outright lying. It's not an accident. I think one of the, Philip, you're talking about polling actual humans. This has been, and kind of the media not even being populist or people facing. This has been one of the things that is significantly different from your John Key government, right? This is one of those major, what do you say, crises or like changes in the way that we interact with media and media interacts with politics and politics interacts with us over the last 3 years. I think Gasa was probably the big inflection point here, which is the public and the politicians just worlds apart at the moment. So you'll have 74% saying like don't genocide Palestine, and then all the Western governments being like, actually we're gonna sell things to Israel and make money out of genocide, despite these huge numbers. I think here in Aotearoa, there's recent polling that said 84% of people were against getting involved in the war of Iran. The joining or supporting the illegal war by the US and Israel on Iran, and it makes no difference. And what that divide has always been there, particularly for right wing or more ostensibly left or centre governments that undertake an austerity policy framework. There's always going to be that gap between the public and the politicians. But now the media is firmly in that politician camp. And so they're not showing their audience what the audience wants. They can no longer make these claims like, oh, it's about the clicks. It's about what people are interested in. It's about what people support. None of that makes sense as a justification for what they were doing previously or like they were doing previously. Like, oh, we have to do this stuff about David Seymour and because he gets the clicks. It's like, no, actually, everyone fucking hates this guy. And maybe that gets hate clicks, but then why aren't you writing hate speech against him, right? Because that's going to get a lot more clicks. Why aren't you promoting Palestine supporting voices in Aotearoa? Why aren't you, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Basically on so many major issues, major policy planks, health, education, jobs, right? Earlier in the term, within a few months of this National Coalition government starting, they'd cut something like 10,000 jobs from the public sector, and you had the ACT Party and on the lowdown Nicola Willis laughing about it and saying yeah, good, we're going to clean it up more. We want these people out of work and we want their families to suffer. It's so at odds with New Zealand values, with what the public had even ostensibly voted for. And it just doesn't matter anymore. They just keep doing it. They're still doing you have to get to know Christopher Luxon, right? Literally this week, they're trying to do that little turnaround again after spending 2 or 3 weeks saying, is Luxon not long for this world? When Chris Bishop made a little foray into trying to roll him. Suddenly, now that's over. It's, has Luxon got another spring in his step? Maybe we're going to see he's finally going to become prime ministerial as we head towards the election. Funny that.
This is another interesting comparison with the Key government is that that evolution of the relationship with the media. It feels like that meme that's like, I am no longer asking, you will want to have a barbecue with the prime minister. You used to want to, but now it's compulsory. You must get to know Christopher Luxon. Yeah, there's this the media desperately wants to do presidential politics, right? They absolutely don't want to talk about policy or the principles underlying these things or consistency. They really want to do human relationship kind of stories. and we have Nicola Willis, the finance minister, going on Ryan Bridge. And when Ryan Bridge, who's clearly like an ACT supporter, right? Like he's far right. He's further right than most of the national MPs, pretty
He's
clearly.
further right than some ACT MPs are willing to
Yeah,
publicly show.
I think that's fair. And he's saying, look, you came in to government saying you were going to cut all the pointless jobs. Like, why do we still have nonsense like the minister for like ministries for women and Pacific peoples and like these other like subhumans or whatever? And Nicola Willis clearly can't say, I want to cut all those jobs. But she'll still say there'll be stuff in the budget that you'll like, Ryan. Like, they know this is how they talk to each other, right? They're friends and you're not. Like, whoever's watching and whoever's listening, you're not on their team. They're communicating to like under 10% of the population. The multi-home owning demographic is like, that's the club.
Mum and dad landlords.
Oh yeah, friendly mum and dad landlords, all like fucking 7 of them in the country, and there's no antagonism.
Mum and dad BlackRock.
Mum and dad BlackRock investors, it's just disgusting, right? And if it, like Carl says, like if it bleeds, it leads. If that was actually your mentality, then where are your headlines like, is Rocket Lab committing serial murder? Like, where's that headline? That's bleeding, right? Like, let's do that investigation.
Rocket Lab data used to murder 160 school children, right? Like,
Yeah. Where's that? Like, where's that conversation? That's, I don't know. I can see blood in that conversation. And even if you want to say that, like, oh, no one cares about overseas or localism or whatever, like, this is in New Zealand. These people are in New Zealand. And you can have, like, pieces saying, oh, how many people have Rocket Lab killed in the last month? Like, target it to the humans. It's not ironically rocket science to like tie these people to their crimes, but we're not seeing that, right? It's much more important to track like, oh, did Erica Stanford say something that like makes me feel bad or whatever? These people are just like presidents in waiting to the media class, right? The kind of genteel quote unquote libs in the National Party. And of course we've been saying that for a long time. But look what happens when you give these people power. Like Erica Stanford fucks up education as soon as she actually has to be in front of something. Like Chris Bishop becomes like minister of everything and tries to take over, and like, you know, 7 abortion haters in the National Party just like stomp on him and tell him to shut up. Like these people are not like competent enemies, but we're just handing them like the country on a platter.
They have the institutional power that's wrought by violence, right? Like that's how they've succeeded. And with respect to Chris Luxon and his relationship to the media, or rather the media's relationship to him, I think that this really is a situation where it's like mother with teenage children finally gets a partner and it's your new stepdad. And it's like, well, you got to meet him. Why don't you go on a fishing trip with him? It's like, I've known him for 3 years. I don't like him. No. You just go on a fishing trip. You've got to do it. You've got to like have a day at Rainbow's End with new stepdad. Just do it. And it's like, no, I know him. I don't like him. No, you don't understand. You haven't seen him the way that I've seen him. Get him to show you his hole. Like, you know, it's just, I can't understand how it is that we are at the end of the first term and this is still the song and dance that's being played. It is curious though. I mean, you mentioned Paul Goldsmith and the end of the BSA. I believe that they have to pass an act to repeal it. So that's not going to happen yet, but Goldsmith has flagged up that will happen pretty much just before Parliament dissolves, before the election campaign, which is interesting timing, shall we say.
I mean, it's not even interesting. It's like, oh yeah, good one, man.
Labour should pretty easily come out and just say, no, if they repeal the BSA, we're going to bring it back because you can't just lie on television. Actually, we believe that, you know, politicians lie already so much. Let's stop it. And people would vote for that, you know?
This is the other really frustrating thing is that the opposition parties, Labour in particular, you know, not Labour supporters, blah, 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 but they are the biggest catchment of centre-left voters, are just still AWOL, like still MIA. And, you know, we're told since the election loss, where I think we basically were coming in and say Labour needs to start their campaign now. They need to get rid of Hipkins and start their campaign now so that they're not like remembered as losers. The Labour response to that, I think at the time, was within a month. This is so fucked. Hipkins had released a new line of Labour merch, which were like cups and hats that said "Bring Back Chippy," and he's like, This guy has the fucking party tied up. At that point, you're just like, they're not getting rid of this guy. He has the dirt. At the very least, he can keep these people in line. He's ended up with mugs printed for him for 2023, saying "Bring back Chippy," which is not going to be their campaign. I hope, and maybe it's going to be, and that's going to be fucked up. And people kept telling us, or kept saying elsewhere on social media, etc. Oh, you just have to give the Labour time some time to review their failed campaign. They're gonna bounce back harder. They're just, Hopkins was saying, oh, we just got to really think about it. We're going to develop some policy in the first year, and then we're going to start talking about ideas. And it just kept being pushed back. And I was like, okay, so when's this going to start happening? When are you going to start building this discourse? When are you going to start soft releasing policies? I'm not asking people to release the policies they're going to campaign on in full 2 years before the election. I'm asking you to build a values-based discourse that you can hook those policies to so the electorate is ready for them in a hostile media environment. Like, this is really fucking basic shit. And we just weren't getting any of it. And I was like, oh, now the excuse became, if they give National any hint, National will just steal their ideas. Okay, fucking great.
Good.
Also,
yeah.
they're not going to, because National is so cooked now. Or it's, then Labour, National's going to attack them. And like, yes, that's part of the media strategy, because there's not many other ways you're going to be able to brute force policy discourse into the media unless it's National, like, trying to take a swing at you, because that's how tied up it is now. Or it was, this is always my favorite. Don't get in the way of your enemy if he's making a mistake. No, get ready with a dangerous device so that when he trips and falls, he falls into the device. Well, who knows what the device is? And the device gets him. I mean, it's double
carefully
win.
constructed French Revolution device. It's
You know,
very
it's
funny to be
like,
like, when my enemy falls, I will bayonet him. It's like, do you have a bayonet? No.
It's so
Absolutely not.
Like, and it would have worked. Like, it can work within a media environment that actually wants the scalp, that actually does do the blood in the water trope. But we're past that point, and we're past that point during the 2023 election. It was over. It was done. And especially in the way that it became completely one-sided. And I'm thinking about, and this kind of is a through thread from, I guess, 22, 23 to today, is the attacks on Kerry Allen, on Torifano, etc. And, just in the last couple of weeks on Mikey Sherman, where the media and the political apparatus can fucking spin up if they have a particular kind of blood in the water. It's really worrying to see. This shit is rabid. And this is even for the chief political editor of the national broadcaster, who is not unfavorable towards the neoliberal orthodoxy, right? I would not call her left-wing in the way she presents the things she's talking about. But they're like, this is our target, we're fucking doing it. And, Philip, you mentioned there was some kind of reflection within certain parts of the media. But by and large, what the result of that was boosterism of the blogger. No, blogger's not even fair. The political activist and operative who dropped the story, who had clearly been fed it by people who were at this compromat party, as a way to flex far-right muscle. And TVNZ fucking rolled over. Just like media and other politicians and council, by and large, rolled over for the Torifano attacks. Just like the Labour Party rolled over and didn't support Kerry Allen, etc., etc. That's the kind of media environment you're in. You cannot wait for your opponent to make a mistake. Like, you can't just be like, oh, does that make a mistake? No, because next week they'll say, I know Christopher Luxon has one of the lowest preferred prime ministerial ratings and popularity ratings of all time in New Zealand history for a prime minister. Chris Hipkins only 3% ahead, by the way. However, have you got to know him yet? I know Nicola Willis has absolutely decimated the economy, but it would be hard to critique her. It'd be hard to critique her and call it austerity.
Let stepdad throw you on the bed like he does to me.
Oh God.
Like, it's horrific. Like, you can't have that media strategy. You cannot have the media strategy let them make a mistake. Like, don't get in the way. Don't act on it at all, because that's not the environment you're in. That is not the political and media environment that currently exists. And the absolute failure of the wider left, as far as decision making, strategy, and electoral politics goes, to recognize that and act on it, is probably, and a week's a long time in politics, but going to lead to National getting home again.
Yeah.
Because what else is there?
And that
Yeah,
makes
and I
sense.
think there's been some conflation. Like, yeah, awesome, good points, Carl. And like, I think there's been some conflation from kind of more mainstream, especially about media operators at all levels about policy versus campaign. And like, totally co-sign what you're saying about like the attacks from opposition don't have to be policy first. You can construct vectors of attack and lines to build policies into before you release those policies. Like the fact that we're not even seeing the Labour Party or really the Green Party with like clear lines of attack to follow this far ahead of the elections really concerning. Like in previous elections, we certainly had those. And sometimes they don't work, and sometimes you have to build new ones. That's what a campaign is. But if you're not even testing the waters, like, when's the campaign going to start? And you don't have to announce your costed specific policies as the leader in those campaigns. Like, the campaign should, I mean, you should really have a permanent campaign, but the campaign should definitely be running post Waitangi Day in an election year. Like, you need really clear attack vectors so that the unfriendly, now like increasingly unfriendly neoliberal media class, when they hear you release policies, go, oh, yep, that fits into the world that the opposition's been constructing, the worldview, right? Because at the moment, when Labour does release a policy, they're releasing it into such an unfriendly media environment that the questions will be, how are you going to pay for that? Like, how is this different from what you did last time? How's this different from what National's going to do? What's National's policy on that? Oh, they don't really have one. That's probably better than what you have. All these just specific, like little hooks that you could have really smoothed off the edges to by hewing closer to the kind of lines that, to give her credit, Chloe Schwarbrick has been kind of embedding over the last year about we don't need to be on this debt track. We can actually afford to increase the amount of government spending pretty significantly. I don't think anywhere near significantly enough, but like we have generational issues that will take hundreds of billions of dollars to, which, I always go back to like the infrastructure deficit, but there's a bunch of other deficits. We haven't spent enough on health for minimum 30 kind of years, right? We're well behind. We need multiple extra hospitals, not just to keep up with population, but to maintain the kind of health outcomes that we had decades ago. Same with schools, talk to anyone in education. We're billions and billions and billions of dollars behind, right? And that's how you need to be talking about these things. Like that should be Labour Party, like basic Labour Party stuff, right? If we want like a functioning social democratic society, we need to spend probably twice the amount we're spending per year, right? And if we're going to recoup some of that through taxes on the wealthy, so be it. But we're going to construct a society where people are educated, where people are housed. We're going to, not increase state housing by some tens of thousands. We're going to like double it in a couple of years and then double it again. Like build stuff, put stuff in the ground that the National Party won't tear up, and talk, like have some courage of your convictions and say those things, right? Whereas now when Christopher Hipkins says, who knows, he might say we'll build like 10,000 state houses, right? And the response will be, oh, how are you going to pay for that? And hasn't National been building community-based houses, to take the housing example, right? And they haven't been laying the groundwork, no pun intended, to build these fucking arguments, right? Which they could have been doing for a year at least. Like every time that they talk about housing, say, no, that's a lie. You are selling houses, you're breaking them. Like Kieran McAnulty's probably one of the only people in Labour who has the kind of gumption to be able to talk like that. But even he's quite obviously been muzzled because he's not allowed to attack, because what if they don't have a policy? What if Labour decide not to fix things? So
he's had to do that as well. He's had
Yeah.
to like say, "Oh, we don't have anything to go yet," right? Like,
Yeah.
and he's like, "Well, now you look like an idiot. Well done."
We don't have shovel-ready policy. Oh, really? You're just going to leave me in the lurch like that? I've been trying to talk for 10 minutes.
And now, death.
And now suddenly death. No. Hey, Philip, have you thought about the mum and dad Sharesies owners, though?
I mean, to give Labour their due, we don't know what exciting new font they'll pick after Mamdani's one that they copied and pasted. Who knows the next font that will be on the next Bring Back Chippy merch,
Don't.
right? What
No,
color will it
stop
be?
talking. I
I'm on
don't
10 of
want to hear
those.
this. I don't want to think about this. No, the thing is, it hasn't escaped notice that all of the people that Philip was mentioning who got knifed when there was blood in the water, those are Wahine Maori, right? And there are Takatapu people, queer people. It's clear who the media can go after. And I want to say to those people who are in those positions, no amount of kowtowing to neoliberal hegemony will let you keep your job when they need someone to sacrifice. So why not join the good side? The other thing as well, this is all correct, right? It is all true that you need those lines of attack. You need to set up the discourse, those kind of repertoires of talking beforehand. Something that both uh, you, Philip, and you, Kyle, have mentioned really is that we focus on Labour because it is the major party, but in the lacuna that Labour has left, in the absence of Labour, the Green Party really could be doing this. It's a party that's been around for a long time. Why not fill the void as the opposition party? And then at the same time, in the voters' minds, you settle yourself as the opposition party, as the major party, and then suddenly it's not, oh, well, this electorate's being split between Labour and Greens, so I guess I'm going to go for like Helen White or something like that. It's like, no, Ricardo's right there. Like, he's a good guy. He actually knows what he's talking about. He's walked the walk and worked hard in our poverty action groups. I mean, you could fill that sort of void, right? There, for some reason, the Greens always seem to be tailing and engaging in tailism with the Labour Party. And for that reason, I think it's kind of difficult to give full throated support because really the Greens could be doing a lot better. They have infrastructure in terms of their comms, they're just not utilizing it in the way that they should be, which is concerning this far out, right? This is also the issue where Philip was mentioning, you should have a permanent campaign. It's kind of, permanent revolution, right? That sort of idea. It's true that between elections, you shouldn't stop your party machine and then just start like cranking it back up again a month before the election. This is something where throughout you can be working not just parliamentarily, but extra parliamentarily and forging those relationships with unions and stealing a lot of those groups from underneath Labour and creating new ones and using parliamentary resources and the platform that you have to develop that dual power, right? These are all things you could be doing. And these are all things they should have been doing, and now they haven't. But at the very least, if we get a consolation prize, the consolation prize should be step up and start talking.
Absolutely. And just to kind of repeat on that, why aren't you establishing your attack lines, right? As I said, it doesn't need to be policy, but one of the other major challenges, I guess, is that we know we've got a small media environment. This is part of why this has been so difficult to watch, and why things have shifted so rapidly to the right is because it's all kind of easy to bundle up and do that with. They all talk to each other, they're all compromised, etc. But there's also a really clear set of orthodoxy frames, right? Which you need to have been breaking down for the last 3 years. So, you kind of implied some, Philip, around the cost of increasing public services. You have these kind of broader ones like Labour's not the party of the economy because National is. Labour just like to spend. This is what those constant references to COVID spending are about reinforcing. It's about reinforcing the discourse frames upon which the campaign is going to rest. So Labour needs to have been breaking that particular thing down, and Chloe has been doing some of that for them by talking about the debt stuff. But that should be coming from Labour. That needs to be coming from Labour. What Greens need to have been dealing with is the way that the electorate still in large part, and due to the media and other politicians, views them as extremists, views them as like kooky, views them as not serious. How do they cut through that? That is what they need to have been pushing alongside their solutions and policy hooks, because again, it's a narrow orthodoxy frame that can be easily shifted with, I think, even one or two big breakout stories and mini campaigns where they're like, people will see the Greens do something and go, wait a sec, these people are actually serious about education or healthcare or whatever big issue, right? I think there was a thing Chloe, maybe 2 years ago now, was saying we're going to go after the unions because Labour's not serving them anymore. And nothing really came of that. But that's exactly what they needed to be doing. Like how the Greens not heavily pushing themselves as being better connected with workers and with everyday people in Aotearoa when Labour have dropped the ball so hard. These really simple preconceptions need to have been challenged. And honestly, this can still happen. We still do have time. Second best time is now kind of shit. But like it's getting really tight, and it's not going to be as effective as it would have been a year ago or 2 years ago. But it still is one of the major challenges that parties that are broadly to the left of National, such as Labour can be described in that way at this point, need to face up to and need to understand. And I just don't think they do.
Well, I think the major problem from our perspective, from my perspective, I would say, and considering we've been talking about it for 8 years, I'm sure you don't disagree substantially, is that Labour don't want to run that campaign, right? Because then they have to do stuff. And this is evidenced by the fact that when they release their list, it's fucking 90% the same people it was in 2023. Like there aren't fresh new voices coming up, because if you try to say something that's not the Labour orthodoxy, you get stamped down. And the Labour orthodoxy is determined by a kitchen cabinet of people who are largely the same backroom operators from 3 years ago, who are largely the same backroom operators from 6 years ago. There's not massive turnover in these humans.
Who were anointed from 20 years ago in the Helen Clark government, right?
Yeah, 100%.
They'll never
right?
do anything good for people.
And I mean, Grant Robertson is part of that structure, and he wrote the fucking, quote unquote well-being budgets for
Jesus. Yeah.
Jacinda Ardern's tenure. And that's the time that funneled billions of dollars upwards, as we talked about at the time in our world-leading, quote unquote world-leading COVID response, which cost billions of dollars that was deliberately funneled to landowners, right? So like we can't expect a campaign from Labour unless there's some like deliberate break from that. Like we need, at the very least, a performative Cunliffe style, I'm not a neoliberal reformation of that party, but it needs to be like an anti what we've been for the last 10 years reformation. And of course we're not seeing that because Hipkins is the avatar of that party, and he has enough dirt or mana or something in that caucus to not be dislodged.
They need to start saying, I'm sorry for being man.
Bring back
Hipkins, estradiol valerate, at least 0.1 milliliters.
This is the thing, though, right? I mean, yeah, we have been saying this. Like, Labour is a neoliberal party, and they're a party of capital. Like, this is just a fact. And they may have members, and they may have people within the party framework, and they may even have MPs that aspire to something otherwise. But in terms of what they're delivering and their leadership currently, they're absolutely that. I guess the line which I'm just like, why hasn't this quite turned yet, is because as an electoral party, they should still want to win. And that's another thing that's always been told about like during the Corbyn years, right? And like, no, but the first thing that a Labour Party has to do is win. And so we have to like rein it in, and we'll put Starmer in, and blah blah blah, and then we'll win, and then we'll get the progressive policy you want. At least like Starmer was like knew that he had to fucking lie about it. But like it seems like Hipkins' Labour Party doesn't even understand that they don't even realise that you actually have to win if you want to continue the neoliberal orthodoxy at this point. Because if National win again, we're sorry. Like, depending on, I mean, Grand Coalition might stop it. Grand Coalition might keep that neoliberal kind of capital in place rather than tipping to fascism. But if we get like a high polling New Zealand First or a high polling ACT that is able to wag the dog slightly harder than it currently has when it shouldn't be able to at all, there's enough fascist decision-making power within the National Party as it is that things are gonna collapse, right. And we're already heading well in that direction with the job cuts, with the crunched economy, with the lack of new jobs being created, the people leaving, healthcare falling, education falling, rents, power, etc. going up, especially for young people And you'd probably say, especially for young men, because of the impacts on the construction industry and other roles like that, which are creating an underclass of underemployed and unemployed, angry, desperate people, which is ripe for fascism. Like,
As a history buff, that sounds good. Sounds like nothing bad could happen.
this is a really well established way in which they do this. Like, and it doesn't even have to be intentional, right? Like, it's just like, look at all these poor people. We'll help you. Kill all the immigrants.
While you were saying that, I'm going to be honest, all I was thinking was, yeah, I'm a white woman. I wag my dog.
You didn't need to give voice to that. But
Sometimes our inside thoughts are so special that the world needs to experience. The thing that I would say to the Labour caucus, which I've been saying for quite a long time, is listen, I know you understand that you think, oh, well, even if we lose the election, we get paid anyway, as long as I'm high up on the list. I get an MP's salary, I get the perks. But here's the thing, Hipkins knows that. I'm sure he would like to win again, but it's not the end of the world if he doesn't, because he's already sat in the big boy chair. So he can still sell himself as former Prime Minister Chris Hipkins when he goes for those NGO roles. You can't do that. You shouldn't rest on your laurels. You need to roll him, because guess what? He doesn't have the same class interests as you exactly and precisely. His interests, his material interests, they're a little bit different. There is a wedge between you and Chris Hipkins, and now is the time to hammer it.
You need to give the activation code as well.
I think I'm doing like ASMR sissy hypno, but for like getting rid of the leader of the opposition.
We'll spin that up in the off season. We'll get some nice like spinning graphics as well.
Chris Hipkins, don't you want to be a good boy?
I think it needs to be breathier.
Yeah, I'm gonna be like, roll Chris Hipkins and you get some feet pics. No, that's not a promise. Do not hold me to that.
Oh God, we thought it. Yeah. You thought the last episode was bad when you didn't have Carl and Philip. Now,
you shouldn't have invited me on. That's on me.
Zero improvement.
No, look, we need some of that. We need to go out like we came in.
Life shouldn't be a journey to the grave with the intention of arriving safely in a well-preserved body, or whatever that Hunter S. Thompson quote. Right?
Yeah, something like that.
Go out like sideways. You came in. How did you come in?
What a ride! I don't know. Who remembers that quote? Google it. But I wanted to quickly say on the Green Party, you're saying like their campaign, they haven't been effective enough in. And I think like partly, and Green Party people will say this, if you say, where are you doing this? Where are you doing that? From the left, they say, oh, look, here's an example of this. Here's an example of that, right? There's always an Instagram post as the new version of, there's always a tweet for the Green Party. They've made efforts to do lots of things.
It's deep in the policy documents. Have you not read them?
Yeah, exactly. But it's not joined up in a way that anyone outside the party sees. But that's the fault of the media. Yes, that's right. That's what we've been saying for 8 years. Build a competing media apparatus and get it to people who don't like you and don't see you. But also B, I think they're really fundamentally unwilling to be populist and against the establishment, against the mainstream, and seen as antagonistic. And we can see this by looking at Zach Polanski for 2 seconds in the UK. Like, he can say almost word for word the same things that Green parties here have said, but in an antagonistic way against the media class in the UK, and get 3 times the cut through, because that's what you need to do. Look at what Winston Peters and David Seymour did last election, as I famously and unpopularly said at the time.
That's pretty red-brown to say, Philip.
It works. That's what the media want. They want you to step on their throats and call them names. That's what they will report.
And
Shut up, Simone.
ASMR for that.
Exactly. So yes, obviously, like have a beer with them and be corrupt in the same way as the current media establishment, but attack them when you're in front of the cameras, because otherwise you're seen as part of the same establishment, right? There's fundamentally and performatively, there's very little difference between the way the Green Party presents themselves and the way the Labour Party presents themselves. And then why should I, a disengaged non-voter, pay any attention to you, right? If you're not doing the Winston Peters thing of saying, these people are all the same, look at your petrol prices, aren't you dissatisfied? they're coming for your jobs, but they as billionaires and property owners, right? It's okay to have an enemy. Like, name your antagonist. Do that stuff. And that's what we need to see more of.
How do you
Like,
think that would make mum and dad eco store owners feel, though?
hopefully bad enough to
What
vote for
about
the
mum
Labour
and dad
Party.
CEOs? Mum and dad native birds.
Oh god, yeah. But look,
Forest and mum and dad party.
we need a fundamentally anti mum and dad Green Party as well. We've
Yeah, I'm an anti-natalist green.
destroy the family. I'm sure that there's no history there to be concerned about.
Look, they're going to lie about the Greens being like that anyway, right?
Yeah.
And this is a thing. And in an environment where David Seymour and Winston Peters will both go for the throat of media, get someone like removed from one of the top roles in the country, crow about how we're going to crush like RNZ, that they're coming for them, and then for the media to turn around and just like give them everything they want anyway. Like there is space there for someone who's a bit more antagonistic. You don't have to ramp it all the way up even. You can just be like, no, you're wrong. And you're all reporting this incorrectly. You're actually lying to the public, and that's anti-democratic. Like it's pretty easy.
The media spokespeople from a left-wing party like the Greens could be saying things like most pedophiles, Ryan Bridge owns many houses and is actually in favor of the National Party's reforms. Put that on the front page.
And it would.
Yeah. So the media just have to report that, because if it bleeds, it leads, and it gets clicks. So
Stabbing
unfortunately,
Ryan Bridge in the studio. Well, if it bleeds, it leads.
look, I thought this is what you people wanted. And
Get out the
look,
bayonets, lads.
it's mediocre. It's medium, right? It's centrist because it's not radical. Quote some group, have outriders. It's fine. Like, we exist. Quote us.
Yeah.
There are attack vectors that you don't have to take responsibility for.
This is one of the major issues, right, as well, is that the Greens they're not even trying to do what ACT and New Zealand First do in any way. They're not actively trying to pull Labour, and they're not antagonistic with Labour either, let alone the media. And this is while Hipkins will, like, quite nastily go after Wahine Māori within the Green Party. And the Greens just eat it. Like, do you think that's a good way to make voters think you're strong enough to enact policy within a Labour government? Or like that they should trust you over Labour when Chris Hipkins slaps you about and you just go, oh, we don't really agree.
Compare how the Green Party and Labour interact, for example, when like Tamatha Paul said pretty like reasonable, not everyone trusts the police type stuff, and Chris Hipkins said, oh, that's like very unreasonable, it's fun, it's like silly, people like that shouldn't be in politics, and the Labour Party all kind of fell in behind that position. Compare the non-existence of the Greens response, or in fact kind of worse, saying, yeah, we work well with Labour on most things, we disagree on some things. What does that mean? Nothing. Compare that to National and New Zealand First, right? When Shane Jones says like really just outright racist stuff, and Christopher Hipkins quite gently kind of admonishes that, Winston Peters goes for the throat and backs up his guy. Of course, right? Because he's the leader of the party. This is like an MP. You need to show that you're on the same side as this person, and attacks the National Party and gets more votes, because that's what the people want to see, right? Have some antagonism within your alliances.
Yeah, if you're not going to fight for your own, why would you fight for us, right?
Yeah.
Like, is the lesson being taught here? And it doesn't have to make sense. It is just a cause and effect situation, and that's what people are seeing. And on a very, what do you say, like basic level, that's the message that they're picking up. Let's quickly shift tact, though. We're being really negative. But we're not. I just want to be clear. We have there are lots of ways to fix this, and we're given like quite a few examples about like why things are going wrong, and how even now that stuff could be turned around. Please listen to us. Holy shit! But I don't know what heading into campaign season. Is there anything you're seeing on the horizon where you're like, fuck yeah, that's something that could kind of pull us over the line here?
I think there is a non-zero chance that Justin Trudeau-style pictures of Chris Bishop from university show up. And I'm so excited for when that happens. I want to see Chris Bishop, Arabian Nights, Mr. Popo. Because I know it's out there. I know that that VUW's DebSoc obviously did things like that. I know that whatever law school, I'm pretty sure he went to VUW law school. I'm sure they had an Easterstein that was like that. And I want you, if you ever went to class with Chris Bishop, to show me the pictures. We're just going to let that hang.
We're just going to let that hang and just give people time to consider it and feel the warm glove optimism.
It would make my day. I don't know.
I'm trying to think of silver linings to project on the next 6 months, and maybe, I mean, there's an outside chance that there'll be forced kind of populist strains to the campaign based on where we are economically and the price of fuel, if nothing else.
Especially after the budget coming in.
Yeah, that won't only be about immigration. Of course, there'll be a lot of talk about immigration, and the media will really want to amplify that because it's something that doesn't disturb the homeowners. It's delightful, actually, to talk about these like frothing racist issues instead of the decades-long infrastructure challenges that we've got when it comes to immigration. But like, just through economic necessity, I think surely at some point, some MPs will start proposing solutions to address economic issues that, because we're at such a crisis, could prove to actually propose some solutions to things, even if by accident. At some point, some Labour MP in a meeting will stumble on something that isn't the party line, and
we
then
could bring back school lunches,
and then hopefully the media jump on that, and it becomes a talking point because it will allow some kind of cleavage within the Democratic wing of capital, I suppose. Small d Democratic, obviously, because unfortunately, like, a lot of people still own homes in New Zealand, and that's the lens through which a lot of people see politics, right? The mortgage belt basically like makes these decisions for us. So yeah, I mean, the Reserve Bank is the government. I hate to tell you, and the bond markets are the government. But like, we're not even working within those like soft capital constraints that we have available to us. But at some point, someone in politics will have to say, as Bernard Hickey says, like, we don't have high debt. There is no crisis of debt or repayment. We could massively increase the amount that we're borrowing from bond markets and no one would notice. And we could solve all your problems. And at some point, someone in politics has to notice this. And this campaign seems like the most logical time for that to happen, because after the kind of COVID spending furore, there was never an appetite for the Labour Party to do that. And particularly as Chris Hitkins was night of the long knivesing half the Labour caucus out of the way, to leap into to stay in position, right? That was never going to happen. Whereas hopefully this time there's been enough of changing of energy internally in this like desiccated husk of the Labour Party that someone will fucking say something and it'll make headlines, and the Labour Party will quickly poll it, and Talbot Mills will go, oh shit, people do want there to be enough spending to, have good lives in our first world country. And then hopefully someone will roll Chris Hitkins and they'll say, oh, look, we could just have a nice life.
Wait, people don't want a 14-hour wait to see their broken leg at the A&E? Incredible.
Just talk about the good life. Like, there's very little hope being offered, right?
No, I'm always asking for more cleavage in media. I think when we think about, I'm sorry, I'm just thinking about what if homeowners were homeowners and it was just for the guys. I think there is
Lloyd Burr's going to get you cancelled, Simone. You're getting slurred out at the next meeting.
I don't want to say something that Mitch is going to cut, but I really am tempted. Lloyd Burr, no. The thing about the kind of positivity is that I think it's hard to point to something at the moment, but that doesn't mean that we can't point to what could be positive, right? Which you're just doing. And I completely agree with that. The most positive thing that I could say right now as we're going in towards the election is there is potential for positivity. There is potential for things to be good, which doesn't mean not critical. In fact, it is essential to be critical, because What I'm reminded of, thinking about what Kyle was talking about before, where there's blood in the water and you're getting attacked and you're saying, we'll never make a move while your enemy's making a mistake, is that your enemy's not making a mistake. If the National Party stumbles, his mate, the media, is right there to stab you. So what's happening with these liberal parties, with Labour, with the Greens, to a limited extent to Party Māori, although they're sort of out of the picture because the fractures within it, is exactly the same kind of ideological construct as safetyism, which is what we see in a lot of activist groups in New Zealand, I think. And with respect to that, it is this idea that the police can push you over all they want. But if you push back, it's like, oh, well, no, what if we're inviting even worse hurt from the cops? No, they're going to kettle you anyway. They're going to beat you anyway. So why not actually have methods to de-arrest people? Why not actually have methods to fight back? Why not be able to train to be able to push back against riot police, right? And in Parliament, that is exactly the same. That you ought to be able to say, what if you had an ability to fight back because there is already a class war going on? It's just that you are losing. And the mentality of the liberal is to pretend like they're not being attacked and hurt, even as they're on the ground being kicked, and to say, don't let your enemy, don't make a move while your enemy's making a mistake. Your enemy has his boot in your fucking stomach.
Yeah,
Get
that could
up
be in your
and
kidneys,
start
mate.
fighting.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. Around the potential, and I think we've whinged a bunch about the inability of the extant institutions to create an alternative media apparatus, but a lot of that has also been trying to build by independents. And you mentioned Bernard Hickey just before, Philip. He is just trying to drag some of this like orthodoxy breaking stuff over the line by his like just out of the grave, right? Like just doing so much work in that space and getting quite a lot of cut through and is orthodox media facing in a way we can't be. Having on commentators and opinion writers who you'd see in these mainstream publications and having some really good conversations with him. He is actively moving it just with his little operation. You've got BHN, right? Who are trying to play that role as a Labour access organisation. It seems like getting interviews with MPs across the kind of left side of the spectrum, playing like a kind of softer role than we do as well. And Pat Brittenden in particular has just been putting in so much work to have regular live streams to grow the number of hosts that are there with the network, the number of different voices out there, and the number of different things they can talk about to have consistent, critical coverage of what the government is doing. Those are the two big ones. Ollie Neese has just started up Public Interest, I think it's called, which is like an interview format panel podcast and live stream. Oh, not live stream, live video, but edited, with a huge range of great voices that have been on 1 or 200 previously. And he's a fantastic journalist and has doing some fantastic framing around some of these issues and is doing deep dives with people who really know their shit about what are probably going to end up being some of the big policy issues of the coming campaign. And then there are a range of other like kind of social media pop-ups doing Insta Reels, doing TikToks, who are all doing this stuff as well. I think alongside that, and this is something that we've talked about previously a fair amount now, Philip, and particularly in relation to 2023, is there's incredible potential for parallel campaigning within the left space this time around. They should have been doing it for forever now, given the way that mainstream media operates towards the left. But in 2023 in particular, the far right parties were doing this. ACT and New Zealand First had their really quite anodyne to the public campaigns comparatively, and then just had a bunch of like the worst people they've ever seen in their list that were speaking directly to these what do we say, niche electorates.
They're communities. You're allowed to say the word communities when it doesn't just mean brown people. This is another thing that's pissing me off. The word communities has become like the C word in mainstream media, and it's only allowed to mean ethnic
minorities. Yeah.
They mean Pacific Islanders. When you say the word communities now, communities can be anything. It's so
Also
bizarre that it's
confusing when they
become.
say like the Indian community, and you're like, my brother, it's a subcontinent. Like there are so many ethnic groups, languages, like what that there are so many different class structures. They have castes, some of
Absolutely.
them. Like
But I do want to be more specific than just communities as well, though, right? Because some of these things were targeted, though, often around a particular issue. So they had like New Zealand First had their specific anti-trans person, right, who was gathering that chunk of votes. ACT had Nicole McKee doing the guns shit, etc., etc. And they were running these parallel campaigns direct to the communities to gather in more of the vote and to up the party vote, while the rest of the public was not aware. And they just weren't. Like this was like under the radar campaigning to bring in, I would say, like up to 10,000 votes from some of these groups per MP. The Greens in particular, Labour to a lesser degree, because Labour Central seems to be pretty aggressive about running party line, really have an opportunity to be doing this. I think having candidates like Mikel Mulipola join in as a electorate-only MP in Mangere, just straight off the bat, doing some fucking fantastic social media, like really, like quite antagonistic and aggressive. Was immediately within hours of announcing was pulling fire from the ACT Party, where they were basically defaming him, and was just turning it around on a dime. Just like, yeah, they're coming after me because I'm pro-Palestine. Like, just absolutely knows what he's doing. Is speaking not just to the people of Mangere, but also to Palestine activists, right? To people who like wrestling, to people who like comic books, to nerds and geeks. And he seems to be very aware that that's what he's doing. You've got Yasmin Serhan running in Glendine. There's already been some early Greens messaging about if she somehow gets on the list at number 18, if the Greens really exceed expectations, she'll be the first Palestinian MP in Aotearoa. That's fucking huge. And that's a parallel campaign that can be run under the radar alongside the Greens above the radar campaigning to bring in people with the party vote, not just in the electorate, to get that up and get Yasmin in and get Yasmin into Parliament.
Yeah.
There's going to be so many opportunities to do that, and there's always going to be that risk that the media is going to jump on one of them. But Mikel has shown that that's good, right? That can be used in a way that helps the overall campaign. It can be batted away pretty easily. Media didn't continue to bite. It was the one person who was doing access journalism with Simon Court drops this fucking story, and then no one else really bid on it. Like,
It's
we
free
didn't
media.
have that.
That's free digital real estate.
Yeah,
Like,
win.
Good. Good.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
People have
Tanya
heard
Waikato
of
is
him,
probably the
right?
most obvious example of that,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Like,
She's further up the list.
yeah. So she's probably the only new candidate with any remote chance of getting in at the moment. But yeah, I mean, she's got a huge online following. Like, she's very good at attack lines. We'll see how much Party Central kind of let her keep saying stuff, or how much she lets Party Central tell her to stop talking about her
I think
Muslims.
it's the latter. I think it's the
Yeah.
latter.
Yeah, who knows? But like, that's an audience now that Te Pāti Māori is unfortunately like really not doing well. Party votes for Te Pāti Māori this election seems like just absolutely like there's no point, right? Because they're much more likely to get an overhang and get one more electorate MP. So party votes on the left need to find somewhere to go. And if you've got a Te Tiriti bumper sticker on your like third hand Corolla in Grey Lynn at your flat, like who are you going to party vote for?
That's a personal attack on so many people that I know and previously me.
That's all our listeners, right? We know who you are.
That's our hosts.
we know our demographics better than any of the political parties do, apparently.
Apparently so.
There was a straight shot 360 no scope the way I did to like close Swarbrick's hangers on. What I wanted to say was this is all very good and that's all completely true. And yeah, it's good to point out a lot of those positives. I also think with respect to potential that you can't just leave it to the MPs because a lot of them, there are some really good Green MPs who won't speak up for exactly the reasons that you're saying, will be limited or rather muzzled in that respect. And the way that you can take them off the leash is if you are in a left institution, we were just talking about the unions, they're one example, but like let's pick them for example. Like, why is the CTU's propaganda only ever every so often, occasionally around and when there's a specific bad bill coming through, or if there is an election coming up, just to post a picture of Lux in black and white and be like, would you let him read a story to your children? What? Like, there is so much.
Would you let him
Not
date
to
your
say
mom?
that they, like, obviously they have strike funds, they have all sorts of, sequestered money, but there must be a propaganda budget. Why not put more into the propaganda budget? And what you can do if you are a council of trade unions and a federation of the representative institutions of labor in this country is give money. And this is going to sound really stupid, but like some of the best left propagandists that I see on Instagram, which is where all of the like voting age young people are, is from like DJs that I know. Do you know what I mean? Like some of the
No, that
best
sounds right.
propaganda
That sounds
coming through
correct.
them. So there are people who are talented who are able to disseminate this stuff as long as you know how to put out a propaganda campaign through social media. This can happen through Facebook. This can happen through Instagram. Unfortunately, nobody's on Twitter anymore. But it is true, right? Like you can actually focus it on creating what Carl was talking about, those discourses that allow policy to cut through then, because rather than trying to fight against a really shift to the right Overton window, you widen it so much by saying, no, this is a legitimate position on the left because people believe this and people talk about this and people have the language to be able to discuss what it means to have policies and to have governance that works for people and increases our democratizing forces, right? And increases worker power in this country. Why is the CTU not doing that? Why are many of our unions not doing this? This is mystifying, but it is a huge opportunity and there is considerable potential to be able to run that kind of propaganda. And not only ever in response to when a bad bill comes through, go on the attack, go on the attack.
Yeah. Pull the orthodoxy down. And it doesn't have to be like really party coded or like union coded. It can just be like, hey, there's some good creators out there. Here's a creator fund, right? Like, if these people are going to be doing this stuff anyway, let's put some of our money where our mouth is. Uh, it's yeah, again, there's so much potential out there, and I think for one thing we also need to keep in mind is that part of the point of these kind of campaigns as well is not to stay on social media, it's to move and force the mainstream media to overcome their own internal kind of issues with reporting on this stuff. You have to make stuff be so cool, or just so overwhelmingly viral that if they don't report on it, they look like fools. Because that's about the only thing at this point that like attacks on the ego. I should say passive attacks on the ego, because if you go straight for them, they circle the wagons. That is going to get some of the stuff over the line, and then you tap the wider audience, and wow, look at that! Suddenly, you've changed the story about the stuff. Yeah, I'm still optimistic. I think there's always like the chance for more positive stuff to happen. We still do need, and I hate that we need it to happen. We need some of these big institutions to come to the party, right? And you got people like us and people like XYZ, other independent creators or NGOs, or maybe some of the smaller unions that are pushing and pushing and pushing and pushing. But you need that domino of cut through, and you need the people that the public is actually going to be electing. The people that they want to represent them to be tied back to that. And that's going to really be the challenge coming into the campaign, I think, is whether the wider electorate can look at some of the opposition MPs and say, I want that person to be representing me in Parliament.
And to take it full circle, just on a final note, I guess, like the way we, and when I say we, I mean like the broad left in New Zealand, will have won in the campaign discourse wars is when you have established kind of media people saying the opposite of the Joe Moyer line on RNZ, right? What we need the established media to be saying is it will be difficult for supporters of the government to agree with their claim that, insert claim here, whether it's we've strengthened the economy, whether it's we're going to build anything they claim to build after the ferry fiasco, after the uncosted, unplanned roads of national significance that they campaigned on and have done nothing about, whether it's the tax cuts that no one's getting, whether it's the childcare tax credits that also no one's getting. We need the establishment, people in establishment media and the lines coming out of establishment media it will be difficult for supporters of this government to take these claims seriously, given the rebukes and responses from insert actors here. And whether those actors are political parties or NGOs or independent media organizations or iwi, someone needs to have that cut through, where the Overton window's been pulled back far enough that there's, enough room for the light to get through again.
I agree. And there are people, I want to point out that there are people who have actually worked at doing this. And previously, I think, when the unions betrayed the working class in this country in the 1980s and supporting Labour, that we might have said, well, this is dead. And in many cases, a lot of the leadership has been like the Parliamentary Labour Party, where they have tried to push out and prevent any kind of movement from below, sometimes unsuccessfully. Like, for example, when the nurses did what was almost a wildcat action during the early parts of the pandemic. And we have seen some success. Like, I wanted to point out Tielemus taking over the TU and becoming president. That was a successful campaign within a union. And there are some actions which are occurring. And I would encourage all of those people, anybody who hasn't already done such a kind of takeover, some kind of democratization of those unions, to be encouraged to keep going with that action. And for people who are, at the top, also to participate in a lot of these techniques and methods that we're talking about, because this can be successful and there is still opportunity, and we are still a little while away from the election. There is time. A week is a decade in politics, or whatever Lenin said. I'm joking, by the way. I know what the actual quote is. Don't at me.
And I think that's about it. That's been another successful season of 1 of 200. What will we be doing coming into campaign season? We're going on hiatus with current events, so we're not going to be trying to react to 3,000 things happening in the week that was a decade, or vice versa. It just has been completely unsustainable. I don't know how we've done it. Huge thank you to all the co-hosts and production people, Mitch in particular on the edits, cutting.
Mitch, cut that.
cut the thanks to yourself. Horrific. Who've been getting over the line every week. It's been an absolute privilege to be part of the operation. But I'm also really aware that we have only been able to react a lot of the time. And coming into what's going to be a really, really nasty campaign, I'm glad for the opportunity to pivot slightly and not be within that current events framework. So we're going to be running an off-season series of content releases, publications, just with experts, people in different industries, people doing stuff that we think is cool. And that we think is going to be useful to some of these discussions about the state of Aotearoa, about what the direction for some of this stuff can be, critical analysis of how some of these mechanisms are working, perhaps, talking to people in different industries, talking to people hopefully within party infrastructure, within media of different sorts. If you have a campaign that you're running around a particular issue, get in touch, because I will give you an hour of my time for you to just let loose about what you're trying to do and why and how to get it over the line. We want more nuance. We want more information. We want more conversations with genuine people trying to do genuine things. I'm so fucking sick of sound bites in mainstream media. I want people to be given the opportunity to actually fucking talk to their issues. So we've had a couple of those in the last month or so. We had an episode about seabed mining, for example. If you've got something like that, reach out to us. I'll set up a call and we'll just release something under the campaign season podcast. Hopefully be releasing a bunch of short form stuff as well. We've got a couple of PMAX Wild Rides already in the tank, ready to go. Hopefully release one of those next week about the horrific changes that are looking possible for the education curriculum. And just a range of other stuff as well. So reach out, get in touch, keep an eye on 1 of 200. We'll still be here. We'll still be doing shit. We just won't be here on a Sunday morning. It'll be a little more of a unstructured release schedule, depending on when I have time and what I can pull together.
Coming to you live from Spark Arena. And he's here tonight. Kyle, don't think that you were going to get away without a thanks, by the way, Kyle. Thank you very, very much for all the work that you've been doing for this.
No, look, I have so much fun
Philip's
doing
nodding in
this.
agreement, even though he's not saying anything. Listen,
Yeah, cut this. No, Carl definitely like contribute
Cut
a crazy amount of his time for negative money. Basically, keeps this running off his own back, and the smell of an oily rag, which is getting more expensive every week, folks. So thank you so much, Carl. Like, obviously, none of us could do this without you, and you've kept this going through crazy difficult times, working crazy difficult hours, and it'll be cool to see what we can pull together. Like, we've talked a lot for years about how organizations and activists and organizers need to not just deal with stuff as it comes, but we need to create the weather environments. So let's practice what we've been preaching and create some environments that people can build on and campaign on this year, and hopefully get us a better result, a more positive result, and, you know, actually talk about the good life, talk about how to make New Zealand a better place instead of just reacting to the latest like frothing invective from the establishment media.
And that's why we'll be campaigning for a grand coalition of Labour and National.
Absolutely.
It's
I
happening.
just want
by the way.
to give a final thank you to our audience and to our subscribers who donate enough every month for us to get our editing done and to host our services, host our website, give us access to some of the different tools that we need. Absolutely fantastic. Some of you have been with us since the start. That money is what has kept us running, genuinely. And if other members of our audience, if you don't subscribe yet, but you're like, actually, I love the idea of this campaign season, I want to hear some of these voices, there's a Patreon link in the summary every week. You can click on it right now. You can help support. Are we radical left wing? Are we extremists? I don't know. If you want to support either of those, I'm amenable. Yeah, huge thanks to our audience for sharing it with people, for getting in touch. It's still so funny to me when someone I know will run into just a random person who'll try and sell them on a podcast, and then they'll go, "Oh yeah, I know the guy who hosts that." And I'm just like, it continues to be the strangest thing, but so many people are listening now, in so many different spaces, across the spectrum, as well. We hate listen to. Big shout out to our haters. Keep it up. Give us some money if you're really getting off to it. But yeah, that's the fucking season. 3 years, 200 episodes, and we're going to be back next week with some non-current events content under the off-season branding. So we'll catch you there. Thanks to my co-hosts, Simone and Philip.
All of our haters are going to be the waiters at the table of my success. If you want to find me, by the time this comes out, it will have already happened. So if you can time travel, turn up to the Everly We Hongi rally outside of MFAT at 1 p.m. today in Auckland.
You're about to catch a time traveler, and that rules.
You're allowed to, if you can actually successfully spot me, you're allowed to come up and say hi.
Yeah, we love it. Come say hi to all of us. At least wave respectfully. Matt could be our
from a
secret way.
distance.
Hide behind your menu at the cafe and peer out surreptitiously at us. Yeah, we'll catch you next week. That's it. We're done and dusted. Peace out, everyone.
Let's go.
If artificers are, then I'm living a pointless life, but learning all your lessons. Fucking politics, there's no distinction. The roads apart now. It's paid with good intentions, and I'll admit that I'm at a loss for what to say when they quote this as a cost we ought to stay. 'Cause I live amongst the people every day. This vindictive, forgetful fucking rain. It feels like we're on the road to hell.